This program was made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Space, the final frontier.
Scientists and humans in general want to satisfy their curiosity. They want to know why things are the way they are. They want to move things forward.
I grew up in the whole space age era in the early 60s and late 50s, and it was inescapable. I mean, if you were young and you were interested and curious, it was natural to think about space. And the information I did have access to came through science fiction. Turns out I found that very inspiring.
Shows like Star Trek are totally a part of the puzzle. It's really the inspiration for what we do. People think of science as being like a lot of lab work and a lot of like numbers, but really that's not what drives good science. What drives good science is dreams and people boldly saying, I think this might be possible. The more impossible it seems when you start, the better the science is going to be.
It's good to be back on the Enterprise. Actually, I'm at Star Trek The Exhibition, a museum exhibit traveling all around America. The crew members of the Starship Enterprise went on their first mission over 43 years ago. And since that time, their journeys have been igniting the imagination of people everywhere. Star Trek showed us a futuristic world where seemingly anything from teleportation to warp speed was attainable. But it also inspired scientists and researchers whose work we'll see as we travel to laboratories and research facilities around the country to see what happens when science fiction meets science fact. Truly, the final frontier, right here on Science Trek.
Enterprise from Kirk.
You look at the communicator that was used in Star Trek, which, was sort of, sci-fi, but now everybody's got one, right? The flip phone is already out of date, right? Now we have iPhones.
One of the primary challenges of making the science fiction in Star Trek seem real are the details. With the ship's communicator, the crew of the Enterprise was able to easily translate any one of the various languages in the universe.
What's the theory behind this device? There are certain universal ideas and concepts common to all intelligent life. This device instantaneously compares the frequency of brainwave patterns, selects those ideas and concepts it recognizes, and then provides the necessary grammar.
And it simply translates its findings into English.
In Star Trek, of course, there's the communicator, which allows people to talk to other people in other galaxies, etc., who can speak your own language. And we don't have to go to other galaxies to have that same problem. In this world that we live in, there are 6,000 languages, and we can't possibly learn them all.
Dr. Weibel tackled this problem with the futuristic voice recognition algorithm, packaged in a tiny device that delivers real-time translations to beleaguered travelers.
That language divide, ultimately, we think is a much bigger challenge than the so-called digital divide, because digitally connecting people, that's happening already. But with those many languages, it still remains a challenge.
We wish to talk to you.
How can we communicate?
Now in Star Trek, we have, of course, that device already as a future vision, and we're in the process of building this.
Dr. Weibel's application will soon be available as an iPhone app.
Can you find me a taxi?
¿Puede encontrarme un taxi?
So it's clear that we've come a long way from just simple flip phones. But other technology in the Star Trek universe is still out of reach, like turning an entire spaceship invisible, right?
I was very intrigued by the idea of having a cloak and having a Romulan spacecraft, for example, being cloaked and making that invisible. And maybe over the years that's been in the back of my mind, saying, how would you attack that problem? It certainly wasn't something that I woke up every day and said, how am I going to cloak a spacecraft? But these ideas, they bubble through and eventually they give you an inspiration that then lets you take your knowledge base and say, that's an interesting problem, can I attack that?
Dr. Nathan Cohen and his team are working with a technology called metamaterials, which in his case are a collection of electrical circuits formed into a fabric or panel that allows him a unique approach to the invisibility problem.
These layers have an unusual property. They're not connected with batteries, they're not active circuits, but they interact with light or radio waves in a way that give them peculiar properties. They can bounce light in strange directions, they can bend it the opposite direction, what you expect from a regular lens. They can also be used to make invisibility cloaks, which are, of course, something that appeals to everyone's imagination and certainly appeal to mine. One way to look at metamaterials is that it's a myriad collection of tiny antennas to change the properties of the way the light hits the metamaterial or is absorbed by it or is reflected by it in ways that can make things look invisible. So to you and I viewing something that's has one of these invisibility cloaks, all we see is the other side. We don't see anything that's in the middle. It's a kind of controlled mirage. Much like if you have a rock in a stream, you'll have the water slip around the rock and then come up again exactly at the same point on the other side.
Ever since Captain Kirk first appeared in a cloud of light on a strange new world, people have been fascinated by the possibility of teleportation. Researchers at the University of Maryland are actually making the first steps in understanding just how this might be scientifically possible.
So in the lab, we're having two atoms that are trapped in two traps on different sides of the table, and we're storing a single quantum state in one of those atoms, and we are transferring that quantum state to the other atom, and in a way which is called teleportation. That means we can take that quantum information from one atom to the other one atom without it having been traveled through the space in between.
What the scientists in Maryland have done, essentially, is transfer a quantum state of one atom onto the quantum state of another. Sadly, it's not teleportation like we see on Star Trek. It's more like teleporting information, and we're talking about tiny bits of data. Quantum information exists at the smallest level, so I'm not sure if the researchers at Maryland will ever help beam Kirk out of trouble.
Look at Star Trek, where Captain Kirk disintegrates at one place and reappears on the surface of some unknown planet. I think that makes me laugh because, sure, we have teleported a quantum state from one atom to the other atom, but that's only teleporting the information from one atom to the other atom.
The transporter is also another thing that seems pretty out there, and I don't think that we'll be able to realize it. Even if it was physically possible, the sort of energy budget is too high and the time frame doesn't work.
Though I don't see that this research will get us to teleportation of human beings anytime soon. And even though my family tells me, why don't you really invent teleportation? Then you could come home much quicker.
Seems that the only way we'll be teleporting in the near future, though, is with a little movie magic. Okay, sure. Some of the things that the writers and producers of Star Trek came up with are a little bit outside of the realm of scientific possibility. But some of the things they thought up are being realized on a daily basis as well. For instance, the visor that my character wore on The Next Generation, it turns out that advances in neurobiology being studied at Dr. Ed Boyden's lab at MIT are changing the way we think about vision. His approach toward a branch of science called optometrics is forging new pathways for helping people with brain injury or neurological deficiencies.
So the goal is to make neurons in the brain and in the eye and other parts of the nervous system sensitive to light. And so if you look at a person like Geordi LaForge in Star Trek, who is wearing a light amplifier, but there's no implanted device to cure his blindness. He wears a very fashionable, of course, pair of goggles that amplifies light and then sends it through his nervous system. One unexplained question in Star Trek is how does the nervous system actually detect that amplified light? And they never really go into that. And so molecules like what we're working on here, where we can sensitize those retinal neurons to light, might actually be the missing part of that puzzle, actually. Now, these molecules are very fast, so they can communicate at the speed at which the brain works. But because they are fast, they also trade some amplification for speed. And so a pair of goggles that can amplify the light might actually be a very important part of a potential therapy for humans for blindness as well.
Naturally, I've heard of your case. The visor appliance you wear
is a remarkable piece of bioelectronic engineering by which I, quote, see much of the EM spectrum, ranging from simple heat and infrared through radio waves, etc., etc., and forgive me if I've said and listened to this 1,000 times before.
Scientists on the cutting edge are working every day to make the science that happened in the 23rd century a reality in the 21st century.
Captain, you'll remember these gentlemen. They wanted to visit you.
Captain Pike was in a wheelchair, and he had been disabled so that he could not even speak except through a button.
I thought you might make an exception for them.
For something that was supposed to be so far in the future, that was a pretty awful interface. But we're already beyond that. You know, we can do better than that now.
Dr. John Donahue at Brown University is already working on a way to let someone like Captain Pike do more than just blink once or twice. His device, the BrainGate, will actually interface directly with someone's brain to allow a person with tetraplegia to operate a computer, and possibly more.
What BrainGate does to take signals from the brain to the outside world is it starts with a tiny sensor that picks up neural signals called action potentials. And these electrical impulses come outside through a plug on the head currently that goes out to a cart full of electronics that processes the signals.
If you ask me, it doesn't sound all that far removed from the Borg. But how does it actually work?
You have billions of neurons in your brain, and there's a little section up here in the top of your head that is for controlling the arm. And each of those neurons puts out an impulse called an action potential. When you want to move, say, to the left or the right, there's some of them that start firing more impulses. So there's more of these events. Those millions of neurons send that signal down to your spinal cord and other places in the nervous system, and ultimately the spinal cord sends those kinds of impulses out to your muscles contract, and your arm moves. What we're hoping in a more modest early stage is that we'll have this BrainGate to functional electrical stimulation system that would, say, for example, allow a paralyzed person with support of their arm to reach out and grab a glass of water and to take water on their own. Now, remember, if you're paralyzed, you sit there all day, you're completely dependent on others for anything. So if you have a dry throat, you want a sip of water, somebody has to come along and give you that sip of water.
Implantable devices and the merging of man and machine may sound a lot like Star Trek science fiction, but we really are entering into a world where this combination is becoming much more prevalent.
In fact, the age of people with devices in their brains is already here. Most people are, I think, unaware that a treatment for Parkinson's disease involves a brain implant. You can put a stimulating electrode into a tiny, deep structure in the brain called the subthalamic nucleus, basically about the size of a Tic Tac candy, deep in the brain. If you stimulate that, the symptoms of Parkinson's disease go away. So the age of coupling the nervous system to physical devices to restore function is already here.
On Star Trek, they have the holodeck, and the holodeck is a space that's able to be turned into anything that your heart desires.
The holodeck was an integral part of the Next Generation series, providing much-needed comic relief, as well as a respite for the characters to be something that they normally weren't. And as our scientific experts concluded, the holodeck is actually not that far from becoming a reality. Our scientists thought of a lot of different routes toward realizing that goal too.
Say that you want to put little nanobots into your brain. This is a little more interesting and tricky, but you put them in your brain and you say, all right, I'm going to turn off my brain cells and I'm going to turn on the nanobots and I'm going to go into virtual reality. And so your nanobots are just sending your brain all the signals that you want.
Or possibly through Claytronics.
The holodeck is something that I think we could realize as a combination of something like Claytronics, augmented reality. That actually seems like it's something that we could do. There's this sort of space issue of how much space the holodeck space. It seems like in a very small room you get this huge space. That's not possible. But the idea that you could be in an environment where it's basically what you imagine, and you have things that you can touch, and there's people that aren't there, but there's like an avatar of them there. That all seems completely possible to me.
Writers of the Star Trek show anticipated quite a few things about computers that would actually come to be. One of the things they anticipated was nowadays we use computers to a large extent to play games. When the holodeck was created for the Star Trek shows, that was an interesting innovation. In the first Star Trek shows, they talked about having virtual reality, a game-like simulation of the world, but the writers at that time considered it so attractive and so addictive that it was actually outlawed. And so in the first series, it was sort of against galactic law to have a virtual reality system. But by the time they went to the Star Trek Next Generation show, they decided that virtual reality wasn't so bad after all, and every starship was equipped with a virtual reality holodeck to entertain the crew.
Scientists working today are rapidly reaching beyond even what the writers had envisioned for the 23rd and 24th centuries. When we come back, we'll find out how scientists today are pushing the bounds of human-machine interaction as we delve into the field of biomechatronics. When Science Trek continues.
Hello, I'm Babette Davidson, and we'll return in a moment to Science Trek, this fun and fascinating new program about science nonfiction. I'm here in the studio with Chip Walter, author and featured interview from the program. How exciting to have you here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Pleasure.
Well, much like the Star Trek series, today's scientists are boldly going where no one has gone before. And Chip has been in the laboratories and seen firsthand the amazing advances in store. We'll get a chance to speak with Chip in a moment, but right now I want to let you know that your support of public broadcasting is needed to help this station live long and prosper. And we have some great ways to say thank you for your support. When you contribute at the $60 level, we'll send you the softcover book. I'm working on that, A Trek from Science Fiction to Science Fact, written by William Shatner and Chip Walter. When you help with a gift of $120 in support of this station and the programs you love, we'll send you a DVD of Science Trek, the show you're watching now, including extended interviews with scientists and researchers talking about everything from teleportation to the holodeck. Now, there's another level for people like me who really love science on PBS and really love Star Trek. When you go all out for public television and pledge at the $300 level, we'll send you all the items we've mentioned, plus the best of Star Trek, the original series, volumes 1 and 2, which includes episodes like The City on the Edge of Forever with Joan Collins, Space Seed, where we meet Khan, The Balance of Terror, and The Trouble with Tribbles, one of my favorites. You'll also receive the best of Star Trek, The Next Generation, volumes 1 and 2, which include classic episodes like Relics, Yesterday's Enterprise, and The Measure of a Man, to name just a few. A total of 16 episodes, sure to thrill any fan. All of that plus a very rare and collectible Star Trek poster. This full-color poster shows the original crew of the Enterprise, a must-have for any collector or Trekkie. Where else can you get special programs like this that entertain and enlighten? Only PBS. So please support our efforts by calling the number on your screen, and don't forget to stay with us. Chip, I'm excited to talk to you about your book and how that all came about, and working with William Shatner. How fun.
We had a lot of fun working on the book together. We actually kind of set out like the Enterprise itself, to see if we could find, what kinds of science was taking place in the 21st century that reflected the kind of science that was envisioned in the 23rd century in Star Trek. And actually we found an enormous amount of it, and it was really a lot of fun.
It's a great concept. It's also a great title.
Yeah, the story behind the title is real interesting. It's actually a little quote from Stephen Hawking, the great physicist who holds the same chair that Isaac Newton holds at, or held at Cambridge. And he would come regularly to the United States to visit his good friend Kip Thorne, who's at Caltech. And one of the visits, because he was a big Trekkie, he was invited to come down to the set of Star Trek: The Next Generation. And so he was being shown around the set and was going through the engine room, and as he's going through, he kind of looks over at these apparatus, and he says, "Well, what's that?" And they go, "Oh, those are the warp drive engines." And he kind of thinks, and then he goes, "Oh, well, I'm working on that."
That is great. Well, probably the only thing I have in common with Stephen Hawking is that I'm also a Trekkie. And I'm proud of that. I've been a fan for years. I've watched all the shows, and it's really amazing that the show that's so entertaining to me inspires scientists to make a connection.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was one of the things that we found. It was really a big surprise. We found that whenever Bill, first of all, would walk into the room with these scientists, their jaws would hit the floor because to them they were meeting Captain Kirk. You know, and he was kind of amazed by that because he was saying, "Well, you guys are the ones that are doing the hard work." And but it was interesting to see that a whole generation of scientists have really been, inspired by that series, and had gone on to say, "Well, I want to make that happen," and actually began to do the hard science that's necessary to, explore some of these things that were just, made up for the series.
Oh, well, speaking of connections, you have a connection as well, not just in writing the book, but working with PBS.
Right, yeah. It's kind of interesting. This came full circle because I started doing work on science documentaries at PBS 25 years ago, and I've had the chance to go to places I never would have imagined and meet people that really open your mind up, and hopefully went on to create shows that aired on PBS that opened up the minds of viewers, and that's really something that PBS, I think, brings to the table that you don't get in most other television.
We bring the best of science to television. Thank you. We look forward to talking to you a little bit further along. But right now, just a reminder that in all those things that Chip talked about, integrity, intelligence, information, and programs that make a difference, it's what you've come to expect from PBS. We value your trust. That's why we look for the highest quality TV programming for you and your family. And PBS, with programs like Science Trek, is here to give you a behind-the-scenes look into the future. Science is changing how we live, how we age, and providing a future full of possibilities. And like the scientists who have been inspired by science fiction, PBS is always here for you and your family, inspiring and educating. Well, programs like this aren't just beamed up, Scotty. Viewers just like you voluntarily offer their financial support during our pledge drives and provide the majority of funds that keep programs like Nova, Nova Science Now with Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson, Secrets of the Dead, and Antiques Roadshow on this station. If you've already called in your pledge of support or donated online, we want to say thank you again. We're grateful for every person who supports us. But if not, think about all the programs where we've given you something to think about on PBS, and then give us a call with your support. We're about to return to this exciting program about real science inspired by Star Trek, but we still need you to find it in your heart, I think even Dado would have called by now, to support this public television station and get some wonderful thank you gifts for yourself or the Trekkie in your life when you contribute at the $120 level, and we'll send you a DVD of Science Trek, the show you've been watching, with extended interviews and bonus material. But if you can go all out for public television and pledge at the $300 level, we'll send you the book, I'm working on that, a DVD of the show you've been watching, and the Best of Star Trek, the Original Series, Volumes 1 and 2, and the Best of Star Trek, The Next Generation, Volumes 1 and 2. A total of 16 classic episodes. All of that plus this rare and collectible Star Trek poster. We want to say thank you if you've made that pledge of support in the last few minutes. If you haven't yet made your call and gift of support, please go to your phone now. Remember, resistance is futile.
At Star Trek The Exhibition, anyone can sit down in one of the command seats, take a look at the visor I wore on the show, and even see the costume for the human-machine combination that is the Queen Borg. Scientists, researchers, and medical doctors working at the forefront of prosthetic research are aiming to bring humans and machines together in more elegant and potentially life-evolving ways.
Star Trek as one of the newer versions of science fiction, and many of its themes are based on advances in medicine and augmenting the human body in different episodes with different kinds of technology. The idea of rehabilitation technology is very much embedded in science fiction and popular culture.
Evolving the enabling rehabilitation technology is a personal mission for scientist Dr. Hugh Herr at MIT. Dr. Herr derives his motivation from a very personal experience. When he was 17 years old, both of his legs were amputated below the knee as a result of a climbing accident. He uses this experience to both spur his research forward and bring a unique perspective to his scientific endeavors.
Started designing my own mountain climbing prostheses, prostheses that could stand on small rock edges. And through this design, I could actually climb at a more advanced level after my accident than I had achieved before my accident with normal biological legs. So this inspired me to go into this field of biomechatronics.
Biomechatronics is kind of like the merging of human and machine, sort of like the Borg. But unlike the Borg, we don't have to worry about assimilation. Scientists are using their research and technology to help improve how we live, even as we age.
As we march into the future, my own legs will improve in design, and I predict that when I'm 80 years old, my balance will be better than a 20-year-old. Because all that time I'm able to upgrade the synthetic part of my body, my lower legs. And at some point they'll be superior to biological legs.
What Dr. Herr is pioneering with legs, Dr. Todd Kuiken at the Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago is accomplishing with arms.
I came across a one-liner in a paper that said perhaps you could reroute the nerves to different muscles and take signals from those muscles. And then finally we got to the point where we felt we had the confidence to try it in a person. That first person was a man named Jesse Sullivan. Jesse lost both of his arms at the shoulder with electrical burns. He was a high-powered lineman that touched the wrong wire. And so Jesse came to the Rehab Institute of Chicago, and then he had these 2 scars that were really quite painful. Even the shower on them would hurt. So his plastic surgeon at home recommended that we remove those scars. And we said, well, he's got to have surgery up there anyway. We could take his arm nerves and move them down onto his chest muscles and let them grow into his chest muscles. He then had to heal up, and it takes, months before the nerves grow back into the muscles, and we could see his muscles starting to wiggle in the right way. So we got him back into the lab, and we hooked up our electrodes, our little antennas, to listen to his muscle, and we had a hand sitting on the laboratory bench and said, Jesse, close your hand, and he closed his hand. And he was able to close and open, and he's sitting there looking at this hand on the bench, making it open and close with his own nerves and his own brain, with a smile going from ear to ear. Now, I'm not going to say it's as good as yours or mine, but it's a whole lot better than the standard of care, which would be, all right, I'm going to contract my chest muscle a couple times to get to the hand mode, and now I use my back muscle to open my hand and my chest muscle to close my hand.
Dr. Kuiken continues to evolve the technology he uses for rehabilitation.
Another really exciting moment in the lab was the first time we gave sensory feedback to one of our patients. And so she had her hand sensation grow into her chest skin on purpose this time. And we had set up a finger sensor that she was able to move across the table on different types of sandpaper and ribbon cable and stuff. And the first time she did it, there was this big, oh, kind of look that just was so valuable for catching her amazement at actually feeling her hand, being able to tell texture.
It's not hard to see how scientific advances might move from prosthetic limbs toward eventually creating the articulated structures of a robot. Or possibly even all the way to fellow crew member on the Enterprise, Lieutenant Commander Data. However, the original series approached robots from a completely different perspective.
One thing you may notice is there aren't too many robots. They don't have little robots going around serving drinks or bringing the mail or doing repairs or vacuum cleaning on the Enterprise. There's none of that. Now, maybe that's correct. You see, if you go back to the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, and asked people, what's the future of home automation? They would envision a humanoid robot that would walk into your house, like Lieutenant Commander Data, maybe, go into your table, pick up a dish, put it in the sink, wash one dish at a time, and put it away. But really, we have dishwashers. Okay, we have ubiquitous technology. You know, maybe someone in the 20s, 30s, or 40s would say a dishwasher is a robot. You know, it senses, it plans maybe, it acts. Is an elevator a robot? What's a robot? So I think the future of robotic technology really may be in things that once they're accepted, they won't be called a robot anymore.
For you, Data, something special? Don't be afraid. They won't bite you.
I have a good friend. When we first met, he asked me, so when are we going to build Lieutenant Commander Data? That's what you're working on, right? The small problems that we're working on, they're not going to lead toward Lieutenant Commander Data. However, I think they're far more important than whatever sub-problems that would eventually lead to Lieutenant Commander Data. I think a lot of people tend to underestimate just how sophisticated Data is. The fact that he can pick up a pencil and write is far more impressive than rattling off some equation from quantum physics.
Incredible.
The human hand is such an amazing piece of engineering. It has 70,000 sensors, you know, and dozens of muscles and joints, and articulates. It's so energy efficient that it's humbling.
Even though we're far from creating Data, Dr. Choset and his team have made great strides in developing robots that might start to help us in the very near future. They work in a slightly different way, and they call them snake robots. Miniaturized versions of these robots will have near-term uses as surgical devices to make surgery even less invasive, saving cost, reducing discomfort, and decreasing the time it takes to heal.
If you need a heart operation, you need it because you're going to die. And you're going to tolerate having your ribs cracked open, spread apart, and having your heart fixed. When you heal, you suffer greatly from having this traumatic experience occur, but you tolerate it because you're going to die otherwise.
Current minimally invasive surgical approaches include rigid laparoscopes and flexible endoscopes, though each method has its own drawbacks.
Rigid linear laparoscopes can only access parts that are within line of sight of the opening. Endoscopes, they're flexible, but they buckle easily. So if you could picture, if you may, a small surgical snake robot, something with many, many internal degrees of freedom, where you can deliver a whole host of therapies and diagnostics without ever cracking the chest.
By avoiding the additional trauma in some surgical operations, the patient would be able to recover faster. Snake robots also could use their many degrees of freedom and unique locomotion technique to help in search and rescue missions.
If you're in a collapsed building, it's very difficult for a person or dogs to get through to locate survivors. A snake robot, by design, is minimally invasive and can get in through this cluttered volume and find victims, again, at the control of a rescue worker.
As with robot and human interaction, every new technological advancement leads to a variety of ethical questions. Dr. Shannon French is an ethicist who explores some of these issues.
I love that Star Trek: The Next Generation took on the idea of a sentient android and, asked questions about what would the rights of such a being be and how would you protect that from abuse. In the context of science fiction, we relax a little bit, we let down our guard, and it allows us to really address those principles. And then hopefully we have that aha moment where we snap back and we say, hey, if I can see that autonomy matters that much to some yellow-eyed fake android on TV, then maybe it matters a lot to individuals in ordinary life too.
The commander is a physical representation of a dream, an idea conceived of by the mind of a man. Its purpose, to serve human needs and interests.
Researchers tackle the human-computer interface question on a daily basis and are working on making the experience as intuitive and effortless as possible. We may not have Commander Data today, but we are getting closer.
The close part is, I think, the human-like motions, the ability to appear interactive, to look you in the eye.
Is that what is known as a poker face?
The parts that are far away are things like understanding human speech and understanding different speech and different accents, and having this all happen in a real world with a lot of noise and interaction and distraction.
Professor Kiesler and her research partner, Jody Forlizzi, devised a project to test human-computer interactions. Their research has delivered insights into the role that robots might play in a human household.
It may not be necessary to give robots a human appearance. What's interesting is how people give them lifelike qualities. They make lifelike attributions to them. So, for example, we did a study of the Roomba, the floor cleaning vacuum, and we found crazy things. People named the robot, they talked to it, particular members of the family would own the robot. And this is a robot that doesn't really have a human-like appearance at all. So people want to make these social attributions.
Scientists are in the very earliest stages of discovering the building blocks of what might actually make something like the Enterprise a possibility. And wouldn't it be incredible to zoom through space, reaching other galaxies in mere seconds? While warp speed may violate the laws of physics, other features of the Enterprise are closer to becoming reality. At the Brookhaven National Laboratory, Adi Herskovits has pioneered technology that might be used someday to create the environment of the shuttle bay with a plasma window.
A plasma window is a device that separates between vacuum and atmosphere without any solid walls.
And from the shuttle bay, that would be the difference between being inside the ship or floating in outer space.
One can think of a spaceship. There is air on the ship. One can separate between the atmosphere on the spacecraft and space with a plasma window, with a hole filled with plasma.
Dr. Herskovits has already pioneered the technique to make tiny plasma windows, a process he uses for electron beam welding. But in the future, he has some hope that we can actually realize the physics of the shuttle bay.
200 years from now, it is possible that one can have power supplies that same size as today's kilowatt power supplies that will produce megawatts. When that happens, then it will be conceivable to build large plasma windows that are meters across. Those can act like windows in spaceships, and interestingly enough, the plasma window assumes the color of the excited gas molecules. In case we use argon, the plasma window is blue, just like in the spaceship Enterprise.
And once we have the plasma windows protecting our shuttle bay, it's only a short trip into the future before we see new materials created by engineers and scientists that can facilitate the creation of the other structures on the Enterprise. Scientists at MIT are on the cutting edge of understanding a unique substance called graphene.
It's the thinnest material in the world. It's just one atomic layer of carbon atoms, but it's also the strongest material we are aware of.
Graphene is one of the strongest materials ever tested, stronger than steel, and it's directly related to substances that make spaceflight possible.
You make bundles of those things and you can make a fiber out of them. Having carbon fibers is also very old, 30, 40 years old. I mean, it's the basis of the space industry. We wouldn't have space flights, not as we know them today, without carbon fibers of some type.
What excites most scientists about graphene, though, is that its applications seem almost limitless.
Graphene is one of the best materials for electronics, and it's also flexible. So that means that we can think of fabrics coated with graphene that will do computation. We will have computers embedded in our clothes.
Computers embedded in our clothes? That seems oddly familiar.
The ports are sick, babe. We have a medical emergency and sensor maintenance.
But graphene also offers the promise of other applications that could make the fantasy of Star Trek more of a reality than previously imaginable.
If we can think of a new idea, I'm sure at one point we will be able to do it. If you tell me, oh, can you build some kind of fabric that is really, really strong and that will allow you to fly, I would say, I'm sure that will happen at one point. It's just a matter of time.
The world of robots and computers has evolved considerably since Gene Roddenberry first launched his vision of the 23rd century. But there are some things that even he couldn't have foreseen.
They correctly figured out that computers would advance a lot and provide a lot of wonderful things. But none of the Star Trek shows anticipated that computers would be put into networks the way they are now. Computers doing things in a big network or social networking like we have with Facebook now, they didn't anticipate that at all.
Which is probably a good thing, because the officers on the Starship Enterprise wouldn't have gone in search of new life forms and new civilizations if they were spending all of their time on Facebook. When we come back, we'll see how advances in medical science are making Dr. McCoy's tricorder a reality when Science Trek continues.
Welcome back. What a great program. I'm Babette Davidson. In the studio with me is science journalist and author Chip Walter. Thank you for being here. We'll get back to Science Trek in just a moment, but as you may have guessed, we're here right now taking some time to ask you for your support for fantastic programs like this one that further public television's goal of lifelong learning. Science is the final frontier, and we have some exciting gifts that give you even more information about the science behind the sci-fi. When you contribute at the $60 level, we'll send you the softcover book, I'm working on that, A Trek from Science Fiction to Science Fact, written by William Shatner and Chip Walter. Chip, you have traveled all over the country with William Shatner. You've got to have some great stories.
Oh yeah, we came across, well, dozens of them, but one of the ones that was most memorable was when we were at Carnegie Mellon University. We went to the Entertainment Technology Center, and Randy Pausch, who was one of the co-directors of it, such a huge Star Trek fan. And he worked with his students the whole weekend before we came in to create a complete mock-up, virtual mock-up of the deck, the bridge of the Enterprise. So whenever Bill walked in, you know, he just put on these goggle sets, and he was able to be right back to the set. You know, and then, so he was kind of role-playing, and in the middle of it, Randy set off the red alert. So, you know, Bill kind of instantly went into Captain Kirk mode, and we almost had to shoot some aliens down with, you know, photon torpedoes.
That's an amazing story, and of course it was a part of his TV show on PBS, The Last Lecture, talking about making that dream come true.
Right, it turned out that, and I didn't know it at the time, but it turned out that by introducing Randy, who was a friend of mine, to Bill, that I was fulfilling one of his childhood dreams, which was to meet Captain Kirk.
Oh. Well, I'm sure there was a lot of information that you wanted to include in the book, and there wasn't enough room. Well, the same thing happened, believe it or not, when we were working on the program Science Trek. And when you contribute at the $120 level, you'll receive the program you've been watching, plus 30 great minutes of additional footage and extended interviews with some of the scientists. When you call it what I'm calling the Boldly Go level of $300, we have the perfect gift for Trekkies and sci-fi fans. For your $300, we'll send you all of the items we've mentioned, plus the best of Star Trek, the original series, volumes 1 and 2. This is a great compilation of some of the most memorable and classic Star Trek episodes. It's hard to choose a favorite, but I love Sitting on the Edge of Forever with Joan Collins, and Space Seed, where we meet Khan for the very first time. Do you have a favorite episode, Chip?
Well, City on the Edge of Forever, that's one of my favorites. That's a great episode. Trouble with Tribbles.
It's so fun.
You know, I mean, that was one of the great things about Star Trek, because you could have some fun with it, and it wasn't always serious.
Anytime Harvey Mudd was around.
Right. Harvey was always good for a laugh, and still managed to explore some interesting themes all the time. So that was what was interesting about it. And then there was one that I really liked called The Spectre of the Gun, which
that is a good
for
one.
a kid, when you're watching, you get science fiction and cowboys in the same show. I mean,
you can't beat that.
Yeah, you can't beat that.
Well, themes, of course, are what made Star Trek the most spun-off series in Hollywood.
Amazing.
And speaking of spin-offs, you'll also receive the Best of Star Trek: The Next Generation, Volumes 1 and 2, as a part of that large package. And that features our host and PBS icon, LeVar Burton. Together, it's a total of 16 episodes, plus a very special poster. It's a 27 by 40, that's a movie poster size, and it's been in the Paramount archives, tucked away for years, but it's being made available with this program. Help us keep programming like this available to you by calling the number on your screen right now. You'll never do anything that matters more. And speaking of things that matter, why do you think science fiction is so important?
Well, I think science fiction and science have this kind of interesting symbiotic relationship. I mean, if you look at going back to the 19th century, we've been kind of predicting things in science fiction to get people excited about new ideas. And then that affects, just as happened with Star Trek, a generation of scientists who actually go out and then try to create those things. And then by creating these new things, it inspires science fiction writers to take it another level and another step. So I think it's really an important part of the progress we make, and on an emotional side and on an intellectual side. And what science fiction is great at is engaging us in that emotional side, the part that gets us really jazzed up about, wow, how could that happen? Is that possible? And then this intellectual side, is fired by that, and we come up with these amazing inventions that we create.
It's the humanity behind the science.
Absolutely, absolutely. Really don't have science without humanity, and unfortunately a lot of times people think they're separate, and they're not.
Well, when you were doing the research for this, you did find some boundaries
Yes,
to science.
yes.
There are some things that might not happen.
Yeah, the writers in Star Trek, have outpaced science and may, we may never accomplish some of the things that were envisioned in that series. Teleportation, unfortunately, probably the technology we would all love to have the most.
Oh, yeah.
Who wouldn't like to just instantly be somewhere
No more
else?
traffic.
Right, boy, no more freeway traffic, that'd be great. But it's really takes about the power of 1,000 billion degrees is what I would have to heat your body up to break your molecular, your molecules down, and then put them in a buffer and then stream them and have them show up on some other planet, so that it was really you. So that's kind of a problem. That would kind of ruin, the decor if you had to do that.
I think I'll stick with the traffic. Remember, your support of this station will help PBS continue to explore strange new worlds. When you contribute at the $300 level, we'll send you the Total Science Trek package, which includes the book that Chip wrote. I'm working on that. The DVD of the show you've been enjoying, and the Best of Star Trek, the original series, Volumes 1 and 2, and the Best of Star Trek, the Next Generation, Volumes 1 and 2. It's a total of 16 classic episodes. All of that, plus this very rare and collectible movie poster from the original Star Trek crew. PBS is here to provide you with a wide range of educational and enlightening programs. Science Trek is just one example of the hundreds of programs PBS and the station have presented over the years, designed to improve the quality of your life. Where else are you going to get 3 hours on the string theory? From series like Sid the Science Kid, we like to start early with that love of science, to Nova and Nova Science Now. PBS realizes the importance of lifelong learning. PBS is truly programming that's there for your family and your community. Nova has been on this station for more than 35 years, and it's all thanks to the voluntary gifts of support from thousands of people right here and across the country. Thanks to people like you, PBS and this station have both the will and resources to provide programs like Science Trek. When you contribute at the $60 level, we'll send you the softcover book. I'm working on that, A Trek from Science Fiction to Science Fact, written by William Shatner and Chip Walter. When you help with a gift of $120 in support of this station and the programs you love, we'll send you a DVD of Science Trek, the show you're watching now. including extended interviews with scientists and researchers talking about everything from teleportation to the holodeck. Now, there's another level for people like me who really love science on PBS and really love Star Trek. When you go all out for public television and pledge at the $300 level, we'll send you all the items we've mentioned, plus the best of Star Trek, the original series, volumes 1 and 2, which includes episodes like The City on the Edge of Forever with Joan Collins, Space Seed, where we meet Khan, The Balance of Terror, and The Trouble with Tribbles, one of my favorites. You'll also receive the best of Star Trek, The Next Generation, volumes 1 and 2. All of that plus a very rare and collectible Star Trek poster. This full-color poster shows the original crew of the Enterprise, a must-have for any collector or Trekkie. Where else can you get special programs like this that entertain and enlighten? Only PBS. So flip that communicator open and make that call right now. We've already learned so many fascinating things. Chip, what's coming up in the next segment?
Well, we're going to look at some of the technologies, medical technologies, tricorder, that sort of thing, and how we're now beginning to create those kinds of technologies. And also there's a really cool technology called Claytronics, which is essentially smart matter, and that's a fascinating little segment.
And as we go back to the program, remember that PBS has always been a leader in sci-fi and science programming. Did you watch Carl Sagan and Cosmos? It was only on PBS. Well, if you've already been assimilated, we thank you. If not, please go to the phone and get on board. I mean board. Call the number on your screen right now. Thank you.
From the bridge of the Enterprise, the characters on Star Trek took advantage of futuristic technology that inspired a generation of scientists. As technology advances, they continue to reshape what we think of as possible. And the world that was dreamt up by Gene Roddenberry and his successors continues to drive further exploration.
I think science fiction plays a key role in sort of freeing up your mind and thinking about what might be possible instead of thinking about what rules play today. So it essentially lets you rewrite the rules. So some things you can look at and you can say they're just impossible. They violate the rules of physics. Other things you can look at and you can say, well, they don't violate the rules of physics, but the energy requirements or some practical engineering requirement really makes this thing almost impractical. And then other things you can look at and you can say, well, that's not physically impossible, and I can imagine a way in which we could realize it, even though I have no idea how to do it right now. And so that's the kind of thing that I tend to focus on.
Dr. Goldstein is rewriting the rules and disrupting innovation with a new science called Claytronics, which is the study of developing a new form of programmable matter.
You might have a collection of particles, let's say they're all grains of, about the size of grains of sand, that work together to form some shape. So it could be that you want to design a car, for instance, and you have all this material, you download the shape of the car that you want to have and the computer-aided design program that's going to help you design the car, and then all these particles form into the car and let you actually put your hands on it and move it around and see what it would look like, not just on a screen, but actually in 3D. The replicator, you could think of that as being like Claytronics, but it's not. Claytronics might look like a steak, it might even smell like a steak, but it's not going to taste like a steak, and it's not going to give you any nutrients.
And because Claytronics is a distributed system of programmable matter, there are other lessons that it may teach us.
Our hope is that the lessons we learn from getting Claytronics to work will be transferable to other distributed systems. And so examples of those are things like the power grid. So you have all these separate power stations generating power, and they've got to share it, and you hope that if one goes down, you don't have a blackout on the entire East Coast. And so that's really a software issue. The internet, the phone system, actually the water system, the air traffic control system, and these are all examples of massively distributed systems in which we hope that the work we do in Claytronics will actually have an influence on. So it's not just about getting to this amazing material that's going to change our lives. It's about understanding the principles that will help all distributed systems improve.
Imagine that you have a machine like this. It's about the size of your microwave. And what you want to do is you want to create solar energy at your house. And so you go on the internet and you see a plan for how to create solar energy pads that you can just roll out onto your driveway. You take some stuff, some carbon, and you pour it into the top of the machine, and you put the plan into the machine, through the computer, and you hit a button, and 5 minutes later, it's accumulated all the right molecules and replicated this pad. And that's essentially a replicator, but it requires that you have nanotechnology, which is essentially tiny, tiny robots that are working at the molecular level.
Molecule-sized robots are part of a field called nanotechnology, and they're having a ripple effect in many other areas, from claytronics to healthcare. The kind that might one day come close to approximating the style of medicine practiced by Dr. McCoy on the original series.
The technology in Star Trek spans a tremendous range of different kinds of achievements, from like the tricorder that sort of reads your body. I mean, that kind of thing, I think we could realize that.
The science fiction writers then take this as the launching pad for all their crazy dreams, giving people bionic vision and connecting us all like the Borg to each other. So, we have this sort of artificially induced telepathy between each other. I mean, these things actually aren't so crazy, to be all of the things that I mentioned. The first step of the evolution, towards this is, will be very legitimate and universally acclaimed uses to help people who have lost function, in their body. As much as it scares some, and it scares me too, it's inevitable. I mean, this is the direction this is what science is going to give us. This is the inevitable thrust of what technology is. And so rather than trying to suppress it, which won't work, it will happen somewhere else if we suppress it here. Rather than suppress it, we need to embrace it and really think about how we want to use it, how we want to control it, how we want to regulate it, and move forward. Because they're going for every thing that can be done that's untoward, that's the dark side of it. For everything that's dark, I think there'll be 1,000 things that will be really profoundly beneficial for humankind.
Forward-thinking science was behind the medical diagnostic technology that was imagined for Dr. McCoy's sickbay.
We've really made enormous strides in developing those kinds of technologies. We can look inside the brain, we can look inside the body, MRI machines, PET scanning machines, and they're getting smaller and smaller and more powerful.
So I grew up, watching Star Trek as well, and know about Bones' tricorder. And then, of course, later I became a physicist and understood, there aren't such things typically as action on a distance, right? So you actually have to think about when Bones waves the tricorder over the patient, what is it actually measuring? What is it interacting with? There's lore, from way back that dogs could actually smell people that suffer from cancer. And, maybe starting back a decade or so ago, various people in the realm of medical research decided to put this to the test, and using laboratory-grade analytical instruments to look and see what people exhale. That's one of the primary sources of odors, from the body. Of course, there's things that you also exude from your skin, but to look and see, are there interesting gaseous components that people exhale that are different? Is there a fingerprint of different gases, that you can look at, and that composition changes depending on your physiological state, or if you go into a disease state. And so if we can engineer, and we can, through nanotechnology, little chip-based systems that actually can sniff out things, like a dog's nose sniffs things out, and with that level of sensitivity and finesse, we can actually now do this en masse. I mean, really think about turning this kind of technology into a diagnostic tool for medicine.
Open your mouth. Well, I thought the machine was... The machine is capable of almost anything. I'll still put my trust in a healthy...
I don't know anyone from my generation who wasn't inspired at least a little bit by Dr. McCoy in Star Trek. And the wand that he would wave over a patient and learn what's inside the patient and what was wrong with the patient. We're really heading there very quickly in the molecular imaging field. In some ways, you might think of what we're doing in the operating room as similar, in that we're giving the surgeon the ability to see something they otherwise wouldn't see. The tumor otherwise, may not be visible on the surgical field, but after a single intravenous injection of the contrast agent, the tumor becomes visible. So I think we're all looking forward to the day when non-invasive technology, such as Dr. McCoy's wand, becomes available to patients One technology we've been working on for the last decade uses invisible near-infrared light to find things during surgery. Right now, cancer surgery is essentially being performed as it was a century ago. The surgeon uses their eyes and their brain to see things in the surgical field. But normal light, white light, that our eye is sensitive to can only penetrate a few hundred microns into tissue. And unfortunately, we know that many times cancer is left behind, or even worse, nerves and blood vessels are damaged during the cancer surgery. So what my laboratory has been doing is developing imaging devices, an imaging system, as well as contrast agents that can be used together to improve surgery. We do this by using invisible near-infrared light, light that our eye otherwise can't see, but that can be seen by special cameras. And in so doing, they can find the cancer that they want to resect and the tissue that they want to avoid in real time during surgery.
Dr. Frangioni brings high-tech cancer fighting into the operating rooms of the present. But with nanotechnology in the future, we might not even need to go to the operating room.
Other ways that nanotechnology can enable new types of diagnostics is, and this is already coming true, is a little pinprick of blood. Instead of just looking for glucose like is done for people that have diabetes now, hundreds of different biomarkers, they call them, molecules that are in blood serum that indicate your current physiological state can actually be interrogated.
The idea of machines running around your body, removing plaque and repairing broken vessels and things, I think, again, it's pretty far off and pretty, fantastic to do. But I think those things are already beginning to be realized. There's a pill you can swallow with a video camera that will look at the inside of your digestive tract to see if it's okay. So I think more and more you'll see devices inside our bodies sort of checking up on things, repairing them, and they'll be really quite tiny thanks to nanotechnology.
When people think about what the future of medicine is enabled by technology, and in particular nanotechnology that has this sensitivity and the ability to interrogate down to the individual biomolecule level, people think of a future where medicine instead of its current state, which is sort of reactive, to bad conditions, illness, can be very proactive.
Approaching disease with progressive science is at the heart of the research of Dr. Jaime Carbonell, who is using theories about communication to tackle disease processes.
Think of the DNA as the library, the sum total knowledge of how an organism should work. Now that knowledge is static, captured in the double helix. How do you turn that knowledge into action? Well, the RNA, the messenger RNA in particular, transfers that knowledge into the factories, the mitochondria in the cells. The mitochondria produce proteins. The proteins are the actual workers that perform the different functions in the cell. Now, how are they told which function to perform, where to fit, how long to do it for, what else to activate from the library to go look up some new information? All of these are communication paths within the cell. All of these speak different languages within the cell. So the problem at an abstract level is very similar to human communication.
According to Dr. Carbonell's theory, disease is a function of communication breakdowns at a cellular level. And some of these breakdowns can be caused by viruses.
What a virus does is it hijacks the communication paths in the cell to tell the cell to produce other copies of the virus instead of performing its normal functions. And then the cell eventually dies and many copies of the virus are born and they spread out to infect other cells. That particular communication between the virus and the cell is something that we want to disrupt. There are ways of doing it with antiviral drugs. We try to understand the fundamental essence of the communication to try to discover new ways to modulate, affect, and halt that particular kind of bad communication. We'd like to build the little devices that Bones does to help people get better. In Star Trek, they got better amazingly fast, much faster than they do today. They were not very explicit as to how this was supposed to happen, but again, we would like to help by making it a reality.
You see, I feel sorrier for you than I do for him. Because you'll never know the things that love can drive a man to. The glorious failures, the glorious victories. All of these things you'll never know simply because the word love isn't written into your book. Good night, Spunk.
Good night, Doctor.
I do wish he could forget her.
Vulcans can mind meld in order to erase your memory, which seems a little bit far-fetched, but actually it's not all that far removed from research that is taking place at State University of New York, downstate. Researchers there have actually uncovered one of the biological foundations of memory.
You know, people have been interested in how the brain can store a memory from the past and just bring it right back up within seconds. And what's surprising is that it seems that the mechanism for the storage is actually a lot simpler and a lot, in a sense, weirder than what people had expected.
What the researchers at SUNY Downstate discovered was that there was actually an enzyme, PKM-zeta, that was largely responsible for the stability of memories over time.
Because it's an enzyme, you have this sort of really remarkable property that you could simply inhibit the molecule just for a couple of hours and erase long-term memories.
We're really interested, of course, in what's maintaining memories. It's only a living brain that is able to express a memory. And so my research had been going on in parallel to this, examining various paradigms of how it is that rats store information, how they express that information, and what kinds of information they store. So it became a natural thing to do, to think about how is it that we can test the idea that this molecule, PKM-zeta, is storing the information that rats might acquire from their experiences in our memory tests. So what we found was that if one were to inactivate PKM-zeta using an inhibitor called zeta inhibitory peptide, ZIP, if you inactivate that, put that inactivating molecule into the rat brain, rats become naive. It's like if we erased the memory for something that they had acquired a day before, a week before, up to a month before.
Dr. Fenton and Dr. Sachter are using their discoveries to gain greater understanding of age-related mental decline like Alzheimer's, not to blot out a tragedy like for Captain Kirk.
If you could easily erase those memories, then it becomes, I think, that much easier for people to say, well then send the soldiers off, send the Marines off. If they get traumatized, we'll erase their memories, they'll be fine. Let's not worry about it.
And the point being? That while I believe it is possible to download information contained in a positronic brain, I do not believe you have acquired the expertise necessary to preserve the essence of those experiences. There is an ineffable quality to memory, which I do not believe can survive your procedure.
Memory is a part of shaping human identity. Some philosophers have argued it is the core of our identity, that our memories are what make us. Our self is our memories. So do we want to think about that principle? Should we have something that takes a memory away permanently so you can't ever choose to get that piece of yourself back?
The prescient vision of the creators of Star Trek has clearly laid the foundation for numerous advances from the scientists we've interviewed. But what does the future hold from their point of view?
The reality of what happens in the laboratory catches up to any thoughts that we could have about what the future might be like.
I envision a future where instead of bicycle racks, we have robotic racks, where you attach these robotic structures to your legs and arms, and you get an amplified physical capability.
Scientists are notoriously bad at predicting
when the new scientific discoveries are going to translate into real things you and I can use. Here's an interesting analogy. I have 2 light bulbs in my hand. This incandescent light bulb was invented by Joseph Swan in England, at the same time, of course, by Thomas Edison in the United States. Within a few years, the fluorescent light bulb was invented by several people, including Nikola Tesla. It took 120 years for this implementation of a fluorescent light bulb to replace this one. The point is, it isn't the technology that makes these decisions. It's people who make the decisions, and the markets, how cost effective it can be, who you're competing with. It isn't just a question of whether the science is great. It becomes a question of, do people need it, and do they need it now? I think we need to relook at the basic idea of what a structure is and what we're doing with it. Another example would be a side panel of a car. Is this just a panel that looks pretty, or is it something that also uses an antenna? Is it something that can be used to project the side of the road that I don't normally see? Are the pillars on a car, what do I need those there for other than for structural integrity? Can I use them as viewing screens? Can I make them disappear? Can I make the car look like it's a view of the outside rather than a view of the inside structure of the car? Looking at structures as combinations of things is probably the biggest thing that's going to come out of metamaterials.
Up till very recently, most people didn't think about the brain or the body as an entire system. And a big endeavor that we're trying to pull off here at MIT is real systems engineering of the brain. In other words, take a systems way of thinking about the brain, use that to guide the development technologies that both help us understand at a basic science level what's going on, but also to augment the next level of therapy in the years to come.
The future is going to be amazing because, first of all, with these really high finesse interfaces between biological systems, the human body, and artificial things, we can go in and control control processes in the body at the individual neural impulse level, and we'll be able to with very high specificity, with very high locality, go in and target specific things that we want to interact with.
In the future, what we want to see is how well can we return as many functions as possible to restore control and independence to people who are paralyzed. The ultimate dream, to start with the big picture, would be to have the BrainGate system pick up motor control signals, movement intentions, have that run inside the body through probably wires that would go to an implanted stimulator, and the stimulator would then activate through wires again, paralyzed muscles.
I love Star Trek. I do, and I think I love, it's a bit cliche, but it's true. What I love about it is the optimism of it. It's a show that tries to show us a future better than the one that we are currently expecting in some of the darker corners of our imagination. And it says, let's look at what we could be. It shows an Earth, for example, that is at peace. What a beautiful idea that is. And it even tries to give some very clear suggestions of how they got there, to try to guide the human race a little bit.
My 2 favorite words in the English language are what if. Just asking the question opens up new worlds of possibility. Science is dreams, and there are dreamers everywhere pushing the boundaries of the possible. Like the mission of Starfleet, they seek out new challenges and work to make the future now. When we combine the energies of technology and our imagination, our visions become reality, and our future is merely another dream waiting to be dreamt by the next generation.
As Spock would say, fascinating. What an incredible program we've enjoyed. The future is now, and science fiction is going to have to struggle to keep up with science fact. Science Trek is a great example of what public television does for you, bringing you cutting-edge insight into recent advances while combining it with entertainment and inspiration. Hello, I'm Babette Davidson, and I'm back in the studio with Chip Walter, the scientific journalist and author who was interviewed in the program. Chip has been in the labs and behind the scenes and has some great stories to tell in just a minute. But first, we have some great thank you gifts that are out of this world. When you contribute at the $60 level, we'll send you the soft cover book, I'm Working on That, a trek from science fiction to science fact, written by William Shatner and Chip Walter. I have to know what it was like. You mentioned Randy Pausch. One of his dreams was to meet Captain Kirk, and scientists dropping their jaws. What was it like walking around with Captain Kirk?
Well, I mean, you're kind of walking around with an icon. It's like walking around with Batman or something like that. I mean, the show has become so woven into the fabric of everyone's life. I mean, you see, you know, references all the time, people saying "beam me up" or whatever. And so it was real interesting to be walking down or sitting in a restaurant, and it would just be sitting there talking to Captain Kirk, and people would kind of do this triple take, you know. But it was fascinating again to talk to the scientists, because again and again they would say, "Wow, you know, you were my hero as a kid," and that whole show is what got me fascinated with science. And so I think that's just a fascinating connection between science fiction and science fact.
Oh, we love to hear about that kind of inspiration. And if you've been inspired and would like to engage with a gift of $120 in support of this station, we'll send you a DVD of Science Trek, the show you've been enjoying, with extended interviews with the scientists and researchers talking about everything from metamaterials to robotics. Why do you think that, and I know this is true when you're writing a book, it's hard to edit, this bonus material is really important?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's great that you have the opportunity to be able to see this additional material in addition to what the show itself is about. Because with the show, you know, or a book, you have to be disciplined about it and you have to move the story along. But there's all this other great stuff that you have that is really interesting, and they're fascinating little conversations, but they don't have exactly, you know, a bearing on the book or the show. And so the opportunity to sort of sit down, it's almost like you get a chance to sit down with these scientists and have your own chat, you know, with them on the side. And, you know, that's a lot of fun.
I love that. Well, it's been a lot of fun. And we do have another level for those of you who, like me, really get into science and love Star Trek. When you boldly go all out for public television and pledge at the $300 level, we'll send you all of the items we've mentioned, plus the best of Star Trek, the original series, which includes episodes like one of my favorites, The City on the Edge of Forever, Space Seed, and The Trouble with Tribbles. You gotta love Harvey Mudd. You'll also receive the best of Star Trek, The Next Generation, Volumes 1 and 2, which include classic episodes like Yesterday's Enterprise, Inner Light, Tapestry, and The Measure of a Man. A total of 16 episodes, sure to thrill any fan. Well, I've always been a fan of Star Trek, and for me, The Next Generation was as good as the original series. And I'm a Trekkie without question, but I do have questions. There are so many things from Star Trek that are now a part of our everyday life, like the communicators.
Right. Well, I mean, we've actually stepped beyond communicators. Again, whenever we were with Randy being the big Trekkie that he was, he reached in his back pocket after we had done all the things we were working on, and reached into his back pocket, pulled out the original communicator. You know, and said, "How about that?" You know, and Bill pulled out his, you know, little flip phone, and it was 1/3 the size of the actual communicator that existed in the first show. So, I mean, we've already moved forward. Now we're starting to wear computers. I mean, you see people that are walking around with little, you know, Borg-like computers in their ears. You know, we're very attached to our cell phones. iPhones are really powerful computers that you hold in the palm of your hand, way more powerful than the original communicator.
I wonder if we'll get to the point like from Next Generation when they implanted it into the fabric
right.
of the uniform.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a whole section in the book actually about wearable computers, you know, and it's fascinating. Really, it begins to kind of, again, blur this line between us and our machines, you know, where we're becoming part of the machine, or the machine is becoming part of us, and that's a trend that's going to continue to happen.
Well, we all have our favorite gadgets from Star Trek, and one of the most exciting to me is the advances in science fact that have come around medical technologies.
I think we're getting to the point, to some degree, we're already at the point where we have a kind of tricorder, you know, and you know, we already can non-invasively look inside the body and inside the brain. And that's pretty amazing. And as the technology advances, it's going to get smaller and smaller. And it's not at all out of the realm of possibility that very, very soon we'll be holding these kinds of things. and waving them around and looking inside the body. The next trick will be to do what Bones did, you know, that he would actually be able to heal you by waving those and then become like magic wands. That'll be a good day.
That will be a good day. Chip, one of the things as a fan of Star Trek I've been watching and over and over and over again, and it meant so much to me. It made me think about things in a new way. And as you have traveled with Bill and talked to Trekkies and scientists, are you surprised at how much it means to people?
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how deeply this has become connected to people. And not just because they're scientists, it's connected to a whole generation, a couple of generations of people. But it was really interesting to see how deeply this became a part of what scientists were feeling and thinking as they were inventing, you know, and how it inspired them. But one of the things that's interesting as we were going from place to place, there was one scientist, for example, I walked into his office and there's a full-size cutout of Captain Kirk and Commander Spock, you know. So it seems like, and there were all kinds of other memorabilia all over his office. And then I told you the story about Randy having, you know, the communicator. So there seems to be, you know, a need to have a tangible connection, you know, and that's part of the kid in us, probably. And why not have something that reminds you of, you know, a cool part of your past and connects you with something that was really important to you. So I think it's a real interesting and it's a cool thing that this poster is being given away.
Oh, I think you're right. And you know, at that $300 level, it is quite a collection because we have the 5 DVDs and the rare and collectible Star Trek poster. Again, it's a 27 by 40 inch poster of the original crew. It's movie poster size, and it's been in the archives at Paramount, and it's just now being re-released with the show. It features that original crew on the Starship Enterprise, and it's really a do not miss for Star Trek fans. When you contribute at the $60 level, we'll send you the softcover book. I'm working on that, A Trek from Science Fiction to Science Fact, written by William Shatner and Chip Walter. Chip, one of the things that I always loved about Star Trek was that it was hopeful. It made me think about things and it made me look forward to the future. You've had this unique opportunity to talk to so many scientists around the country. After those conversations, did you feel like Star Trek, like it was hopeful?
Yeah, I mean, you don't talk to a scientist without getting hope. I don't think anyone even becomes a scientist unless they're an optimist. I mean, you have to fundamentally believe you can change the future. And generally, unless you're a mad scientist, you want to change it for the better. And I think that's what's, again, interesting here is that Star Trek's probably one of the few really popular science fiction stories that is not a dystopian view of the future. It's not bleak and dark. We have been wrestling with our demons, but we're overcoming them, you know, and we're making progress. And that's, I think, one of the great attractions of Star Trek. And it's precisely the kind of attitude that you see in scientists. Maybe it's because some of them grew up on Star Trek, or maybe it's because Star Trek's so woven into our society that it's affected our general, you know, thinking. Or maybe we're optimists because we're Americans, and Americans tend to be optimistic. But for whatever the reason, you know, it gives you hope for the future because we are facing some big, big problems. And it's good to know that there are people out there with the right kind of emotional set and those very bright brains, you know, that are putting their ideas to work, and hopefully that'll be good for all of us.
These are people that want to make a difference.
Absolutely, they've committed their lives to it. You know, not a bad job too, you know, when you think about it.
There are 4 fundamental ideas that shape the way PBS and this station develop the programs we provide to you and your family. Editorial integrity, quality, diversity, and local independence. PBS is always looking for the highest quality programming. We want to provide programs that stimulate, educate, inform, challenge, entertain, and even amuse. You know when you're watching PBS. It's so smart and engaging. And the power to keep this unique source of intelligent, high-quality programming available rests in your hands. That's because viewers just like you, who voluntarily offer their financial support during these pledge drives, make all of our programming possible. There would be no Nova without you. Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson would be looking for the Apophis asteroid all alone without you. The 6 most important words on PBS are made possible by viewers like you. If you've already phoned in a pledge of support, we thank you. If not, please make that call. After all, it's your support that can help us seek out new programming. to explore new ideas, to boldly go where no other television can take you. And like Counselor Troy, I just feel like you're ready to make that call. When you contribute at the $60 level, we'll send you the softcover book, I'm Working on That, a trek from science fiction to science fact, written by William Shatner and Chip Walter. When you help with a gift of $120 in support of this station and the programs you love, we'll send you a DVD of Science Trek, the show you're watching now, including extended interviews with scientists and researchers talking about everything from teleportation to the holodeck. Now, there's another level for people like me who really love science on PBS and really love Star Trek. When you go all out for public television and pledge at the $300 level, we'll send you all the items we've mentioned, plus the best of Star Trek, the original series, volumes 1 and 2. You'll also receive the best of Star Trek, the Next Generation, volumes 1 and 2. A total of 16 episodes, sure to thrill any fan. All of that plus a very rare and collectible Star Trek poster. This full-color poster shows the original crew of the Enterprise, a must-have for any collector or Trekkie. Where else can you get special programs like this that entertain and enlighten? Only PBS. Chip, you have been around the public television system for quite some time. I made some pretty passionate statements. Do you feel that way about PBS?
Well, I particularly, when it comes to science programming, I think as a society, it's extremely important for us to be informed. I mean, it's difficult these days as technology and science gets more and more complex to hang on to that, and it's easier for people to say, you know what, that's beyond me, so I'm just not going to pay attention to it. But one of the things that we can do with shows like this is we can help engage people in a way that's entertaining, that's enlightening, and I think that's what PBS does extremely well. And if we can do that, and we have to do it, if we can do that, then we will be a smarter society, and as a result, we're going to make more informed decisions. And in a democracy, if you make bad decisions, well, then you're not going to have a very good future.
Well, I like our chances. If people watch PBS, we're in good shape. Chip,
Absolutely.
thank you so much for being here and for
Thank
this
you.
wonderful program. We're happy to have you as a part of the PBS family. We would like you to make PBS a part of your family as well by calling the number on your screen. When you do, we have some great ways to say thank you, and we have just a few moments left, so think about that. When you contribute at the $60 level, we'll send you the softcover book, I'm Working on That, a trek from science fiction to science fact, written by William Shatner and Chip Walter. When you call with a gift of $120 in support of this station, we'll send you a DVD of Science Trek, the show you've been watching and enjoying with that great extended interview material. And if you're like me, for the really engaged pledge at the $300 level, we'll send you all of the items we've mentioned, plus the best of Star Trek, the original series, volume 1 and 2, which includes episodes like my favorite, The City on the Edge of Forever, Space Seed with Khan, and The Balance of Terror. You'll also receive the best of Star Trek The Next Generation, volumes 1 and 2, which include classic episodes like Yesterday's Enterprise and The Measure of a Man. A total of 16 episodes sure to thrill any fan. All that plus the rare and collectible Star Trek poster we've been talking about. It's full color, it shows the original crew of the Enterprise. It is a must-have for any collector or Trekkie. Where else can you get special programs like this that entertain and enlighten? Science has always been cool on PBS. NOVA's been on for more than 35 years. So please support our efforts by calling the number on your screen right now. There's no doubt that PBS provides you with programs that engage you and your family in the latest that science has to offer. Our programs are irresistible. Indeed, you might say at this point, resistance is futile. We want to keep programs like this coming, so please go to your phone right now and make it so.